This video is sponsored by Surfshark, more on them later. Hey, do you know what's happening over the next few weeks? Well, we had some glitchy Pokemon games come out, and I suppose there's Christmas in there somewhere, and I'm going to talk about the best and worst games of the year. But there's also the third wave of Mario Kart 8 booster tracks to come in the holiday season, which only serves to remind me that by the time that Nintendo are done with the booster tracks, they will have supported Mario Kart 8 in some capacity for 9 years! Which I probably don't have to say is significantly longer than any other Mario Kart game. So given that fact, now seems like a good time to look back over 30 years of Mario Kart games and work out which ones were hot trash and which were deserving of the kind of support that Nintendo have given to Mario Kart 8. They could have spread the love around a bit more evenly for sure. And if you fancy spreading some security around your internet presence and protecting your personal data from sneaky internet pirates, then thankfully we have this video sponsor Surfshark fighting the good fight. VPNs like Surfshark let you connect to servers across the globe, with Surfshark in particular having over 3,200 servers spread across 100 countries now, so you can access international streaming libraries and watch, say, Japanese Netflix and absorb all the anime your eyeballs can handle. And plus, I should mention that there's some more serious applications since online security is more important than ever these days, and Surfshark can help secure your data with industry-leading measures by using uncrackable encryption and the best VPN protocols around, so you can join public Wi-Fi safe in the knowledge that your personal data is being kept nice and safe. Surfshark is super easy to install and can run on unlimited devices from a single subscription, so you can safely do all your interneting on a massive number of different platforms, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 live customer support, that's like an avalanche of good stuff. You can go to surfshark.deals/RabbidLuigi and enter the promo code RabbidLuigi for 83% off and 3 extra months for free. That link is also in this video's description if you really don't fancy typing all of that out. Secure your connection now with Surfshark. Anyway, let's kart those Marios! For a while, the worst Mario Kart game was a bit of a formality. Nintendo have rarely made any major missteps with this franchise, but 2019's attempt at bringing Mario Kart onto mobile devices with Mario Kart Tour didn't exactly go so well. You can just about get away with gacha mechanics in something like Fire Emblem Heroes since the character pool is so massive, but for something like Tour, where the character roster is smaller, having to pay for a chance to unlock characters came off as a sneaky way of charging players for the privilege of playing as someone like Luigi, who should have been there from the start. It's all a bit scummy, and throw in some awkward touch controls and fake online multiplayer against bots, and it's comfortably the worst way to play Mario Kart. The gacha has now been removed, so it's not so terrible now, but it's still not what I would want from a mobile Mario Kart game. Some of the tracks are cool though. The original Super Mario Kart is hard to play these days. Racing games in general from that period haven't aged particularly well since the genre really came into its own with the widespread adoption of 3D graphics, and so a more limited way of playing Mario Kart stacks up poorly against where the franchise has gone since. Still though, Super Mario Kart is a fun time, albeit a heavily diluted one, since the lunacy and more ambitious presentation of later games is set aside for just being a fairly simple, no-frills racing game with Mario characters. Really, it's a case of future games making improvements instead of Super Mario Kart being a bad game stuck on inferior hardware, and in a vacuum, it's still a decent game. But hey, we're doing a lot of comparing in this video, so hard luck. Mario Kart has been subject to perhaps more experiments than your average Nintendo franchise, and my proof is that the most recent game isn't Mario Kart 8 or Tour, but actually a game where you can drive a physical Mario around your house. Mario Kart Live Home Circuit is a fun technical experiment that I'm sure 7-year-old me would have lost his mind over, as it brings to life every fantasy I've had driving cars around my living room. As an actualized idea, it's a wonderful achievement, and you can put as much effort into creating a real-life course as you have energy to spare, but that's the major issue with Home Circuit, the real-world time sink. Making the course takes time, and then you've got to keep them functional and pick the hair out of the tyres on your kart, and that's before you run into the startling reality that if you live somewhere without a lot of floor space, or your space is in a room with a really thick carpet, you're shit out of luck. It's a lovely idea, but one that struggles when dragged over the shitty veneer of reality. Sucks, but that's the truth. As part of my research for a video like this, I like to do a bit of googling to see what other people are saying, but mostly to make sure I'm not forgetting a game or two. In all my research, I never found a ranking that included the Mario Kart arcade games, and because I'm no coward, that means we need to talk about them. We're starting with the most recent game, which is actually the VR Mario Kart game, which is a wild concept on its own, as you strap into the eyes of the Mario character of your choice. Its availability is a lot more limited than the other arcade games, since obviously not every arcade has the budget for a VR setup, but playing Mario Kart in virtual reality is a hell of an experience. To help with motion sickness, the tracks aren't too nutty, especially of the caliber of some of the more chaotic races, but as a test of this technology, I can see the appeal. Needs a bit of tweaking though. Namco's Mario Kart arcade deal started way back in 2005 with the original Mario Kart Arcade GP. And this is the kind of game that immediately distinguishes itself from the mainline Mario Kart games by the fact that you can choose characters from Pac-Man to race as. Only one of the ghosts though, so you have to make do with Blinky. It's built on the Double Dash engine, which given its release window makes sense, but it plays completely differently with a much stronger focus on items, to the point where there's actually 93 different items that you can pick up. It helps keep the racing fresh and exciting, but if anything, your average race ends up feeling a little too chaotic and random, and in a game where you have to pay more money every time you fail to win, that can end up being very frustrating. Plus, there's an image of the Beslan school hostage crisis in the game's files for some reason, a terrorist attack in Russia that claimed the lives of 333 people. Maybe don't have that as a test image? The one common complaint with Arcade GP was that playing it was too expensive, and so hearing this, Namco made Arcade GP2 significantly cheaper. There's not a ton to say about the sequel, given that it only came out 2 years later and it's presented in roughly the same way, but it added some new characters and allowed you to customize the karts like in Mario Kart DS. There's even more items in GP2 somehow, and now you can play as Waluigi and Mamechi for some reason. I'm pretty sure it's a Tamagotchi. And in general, it feels like a very natural expansion of the first arcade game. And there's no reference to real-life tragedies, so yeah, it's a big improvement. I think the easiest way to describe Mario Kart Super Circuit is Super Mario Kart, but a little bit better in every area. It has the same shallow perspective, but since the map is mini and doesn't take up literally half the screen, you can see a lot more of the track and generally have an easier time racing around it. What I remember the most from Super Circuit is it being really hard to get used to, since I played it after having gotten used to drifting in 3D games, and by comparison, it often feels like Super Circuit is running on really low traction, so you end up skidding all over the place. It's also home to one of the hardest Rainbow Road tracks in Mario history, but to be fair, most Mario Kart games are fairly easy as standard, so some extra challenge is always welcome. Still, like with Super Mario Kart, going back to Super Circuit nowadays is a cultural shock given how far we've come since, so bring your nostalgia goggles and buckle yourself in. Then you'll be fine. The final leg of our thriller-minute journey exploring Mario Kart arcade games takes us to the latest non-VR game, and GP DX is pretty much the culmination of everything that Namco learned from the previous 2 games. DX of course stands for Deluxe, so it's got a lot to live up to, and in borrowing the gliding and underwater sections from Mario Kart 7, it instantly puts itself above the other arcade games for variety alone, really. Plus you get boosts off of drifting now, so you can actually get some speed up in this one, which is very handy now that we've got some creatively designed tracks again. No Rainbow Road for some reason, which is such a shame given that this is the first HD Mario game, and you gotta know that all of those colours would have popped off so hard. Ah well, I guess I'll have to make do with the Taiko drum as a playable character. He's a good driver for someone with stubby arms. Sticking Mario Kart on a console as rampantly successful as the Wii was always likely to be a recipe for success, and sure enough, Mario Kart Wii does basically everything that a good Mario Kart game needs to do. It could have been a safe title that recycled ideas from Double Dash and done quite well for itself, but I appreciate that Mario Kart Wii took some risks and introduced some ideas and concepts that I never thought would get close to ending up in a Mario Kart game. I remember the controversy surrounding the bikes and the tricks you can do off jumps, and the concern that this was moving the franchise away from its roots, but the bikes help with kart customization and the jumps are an additional skill to master. Really, the only downsides I can think of are all the hackers that ruined online play, and how often you'd get comboed by multiple items so you'd lose a bunch of places in one go, but other than that, you really can't go wrong here at all. I don't know how the general public feel about Mario Kart 64 these days. In the grand pantheon of iconic N64 games that lit up people's childhoods, I feel like not as many are defensive of some of Mario Kart 64's less graceful qualities, and the teething problems that naturally emerged from adding an extra dimension to a 2D racing game. It doesn't really matter though, because while there are certainly better Mario Kart games out there, it's incredibly impressive just how much Nintendo got right with this game. The flat tracks of Super Mario Kart have been traded out for huge, vast 3D expanses, which immediately upgrades the racing to new levels, and when you combine that with 4-player multiplayer, it's a completely different ballgame all of a sudden. The sense of speed is there now, and having corners rush up on you from the horizon makes Mario Kart 64 one of the most satisfying games in this video, and no one will forget their first time on the N64 Rainbow Road. I feel so uplifted. Hey, did you know that by the time that 2011 rolled around and Nintendo decided to make a new Mario Kart game for the 3DS, it was the 9th game in the series, including those pesky arcade games that everyone wants to forget about? Yeah, well, Nintendo called it Mario Kart 7 because they're hilarious, and even they like to pretend that Pac-Man's never gone racing with Mario before. With the 3DS emulating an experience closer in feel to home consoles, Mario Kart 7 is a game that was made with zero compromise. The 3D effect is hardly used, but the 3D graphics are so sharp that all the new circuits are beautifully realized, and since this is the game that introduced gliders and underwater racing, there's some damn impressive tracks in this game. I don't like the character roster though, and frankly the Honey Queen should be nowhere near a Mario Kart game. How are you gonna leave out Waluigi for someone like her? Mario Kart DS has mission mode, and frankly any other argument is irrelevant because having a series of unique scenarios to work through that included a handful of really fun boss fights was such a bonus in this game. I've probably put more time into Mario Kart DS than any other Mario Kart game, since I would come home from school and race through every track in a random order because there really aren't too many bad tracks in this game, and the highlights are easily some of the most creative circuits ever made for Mario Kart. DS used Nintendo's fledgling online play superbly, and it helped to enhance all of this game's strong qualities, even if snaking was broken as hell and practically a requirement for keeping up with the competition. Few games have realized Mario Kart's potential quite like this one. On the face of it, it looks like Mario Kart Double Dash is a drastic reimagining of what a Mario Kart game looks like. 2 riders per kart hints at a more carefree approach that leans a bit more on items wreaking havoc and casual couch co-op comedy? But actually, Double Dash is more like a hefty refinement of Mario Kart 64, with basically everything that made the first 3D outing so good, made even better in the second. The same awe that many felt seeing tracks realized in 3D is amplified so much now we've got crisp 3D models blitzing their way through some impressively elaborate race circuits, and even something like Baby Park, which, while perhaps being a little less complicated, perfectly captures the casually chaotic feel of Double Dash. It's kind of where Mario Kart became more of a party game, and I love it. The more I think about it, the only thing missing is online play, and even though there's fan-made online modes floating around these days, Nintendo hadn't quite worked it out with the GameCube in 2003. Only a year before Halo 2 came out though, so it's not as much of an excuse as you might think. I wouldn't have got anything done. I think history will show that alongside the creation of Splatoon, the Wii U's greatest legacy is undoubtedly Mario Kart 8. Building on everything that has come before with features like the gliders and trick boosting combined with anti-gravity to help create some ludicrously elaborate racing tracks where you can gather together 11 other players to race across the world with. And I tried really hard to think of a scenario where I can rock the boat and put Double Dash on top, but the consistent quality of 8 that was boosted with the deluxe re-release and all the DLC that's come since, and bringing back battle mode has made this the quintessential Mario Kart experience, and one that is now more accessible than ever before. It's the best-selling game on the last 2 Nintendo consoles, and it has elevated Mario Kart to this new plane of public awareness. It's now one of Nintendo's biggest, most reliable cash cows, and the mere existence of the booster packs is a testament to how much money can still be made off a nearly decade-old game. It looks amazing, sounds incredible, and still plays as tight as a drum. Not sure what else you can do here beyond finally making Nintendo Kart. A conversation for another time. So yeah, that was my ranking of every single Mario Kart game. Do you agree? Is there a different game you'd have as your favourite? Let me know in a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more in the future, and hit that bell for notifications of every new upload. And if you need to watch something right now, I made a video last week about the funniest games ever made. I also want to thank my top supporters on Patreon, including Scott Riker, Sarah Malion, and the Green Scorpion. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.